Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Scarfey Spurs Talk page, and welcome to this podcast, the regular Monday podcast on everything Tottenham. Obviously, a lot going on in the world of Tottenham. We've had a managerial change, players' comments, everything going, transfer news. It's all going on around Tottenham, and I've got some great guests to join me in talking about what's going on in the world of Tottenham. First of all, let's start with Phillip. How you doing, Phillip? How are you doing? How's it been for you in this whirlwind of Spurs?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. And thanks to you and also to Harry, obviously, for having me on. Yeah, it's been a crazy few weeks, hasn't it? Crazy few months, crazy whole season in the world of Spurs, which seems to never change. But I've got to be honest, I've been living on cloud nine since the trophy win. And, I've been one of those fans who was kind of calling for Ange to go earlier on in the season. So, despite the emotional, attachment of him winning the cup for us, right? And me also admitting and being very happy to admit that I think he goes as a legend, and I'm very happy. I've been quite buzzing since, last week, or since the Frank rumours started up, because I actually would have liked to have had Frank before we got Ange, actually, back then. And I think he's absolutely perfect for what we need and for where we are. So yeah, buzzing, actually, to be honest. I just can't wait. If I'm being honest, like, as I said, I'm happy with Ange that, for everything he's done. And I think he brought the club forward in his own way. Don't want to talk about him too much because I think, that era is gone now. But he set us up well, I think, with the squad. And I think it's now down to Frank to take us forward. And I honestly think he's the perfect guy. So I just can't wait for us to start signing some players. And then kind of get ready for that game against PSG, who are obviously playing quite badly at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. After a 4-0 rumping of Atletico Madrid, I'm sure we can go there and turn them over. But yeah, no, I mean, it's great to have you back, Phillip. Again, obviously, always come with such an excellent knowledge on Tottenham. So it's always great to have, some people back on. And no, you're completely right. Although we can remember Ange and everything that happened in the past, we keep on moving forward and look at what this new Frank era will be. So we'll get into all of that today. Rachael, how are you? Obviously, haven't spoke to you in a couple of weeks, but I'm sure you're always keeping up to date with everything Tottenham, aren't you?
Oh, yes. I was calling for Ange. You can hear me, can't you?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Good.
I was calling for Ange to be sacked. You all know this. I repeated it to him to be sacked. I'm a bit gutted because he won us a trophy, but he needed to go. I'm quite excited to see how Tom fits how he does managers. I hope Romero don't go, but I think he will. I also think Son will go as well. So
yeah, we'll get into all of that in general. I mean, it's going to be probably a big shake up at Tottenham. We're expecting to see a lot change and a lot, and it's going to be a really, really busy time at Tottenham with, the possibility of Son, Romero, all of these key figures leaving. And then you've got to look at the possible replacements. And we'll definitely get into all of that. But next, Justin, how are you doing? How was, obviously we spoke last week. But again, a lot happens in the world of Tottenham. We're back again to talk more.
Well, we are, because I think the difference there is that there has been now the final confirmation that the Frank's through the door. And obviously we've seen our first signing. So to be fair, from our side, it's going to be now interesting now that I feel like the official window has opened. I think that one before was a bit of a farce, really, more than anything else. I don't understand why they had to have a separate window. You could have just had two windows. It did not make any sense, one iota, to be honest. So it's just now going to be on the board, because obviously we've now seen that the I can't remember how you say his name, but the new CEO's come in. He's now arranged with the Supporters Trust to actually have a sit down. So that will be interesting because I think there's going to be quite a few people really wanting to know, well, what is important at this club? Because we sacked a man who's won a trophy, and okay, a bit like Rachael, I didn't think he was the right man, but where are we going with this? Are we basically coming out and saying challenging for the top four and maybe having a run in a cup is important? Or was that a case of, maybe just once every 15, 20 years we sacrifice a league to win a trophy? It's an interesting one from that aspect. So, it will be very telling to see what comes next.
Definitely, Justin. I mean, it's a very contentious decision either way you look at it. There's always going to be what ifs. There's always going to be, what are people feeling about it? But again, we'll get onto that. But lastly, I just want to introduce a bit of a latecomer, but we've also got Travis with us as well. How you doing, Travis? Obviously, I haven't spoken to you in a little bit, but here you're doing obviously a lot of good mental health work. But obviously, it's great to have you back talking Tottenham too.
Yeah, sorry, I go away tomorrow, so I'm kind of looking in one direction towards the terminal, the airport at the moment. I'm going to Turkey for a week, so should be nice. Yeah, thank you for having me back on as always. The madness of the world of Spurs at the moment. I'm happy with Thomas Frank. I've got a lot of pros and a lot of cons. The cons being he hasn't got any sort of experience within the Champions League or Europa. That's my only downside, really. Other than that, I think he's a fantastic manager. I can't understand why. I can and can't understand why we sacked Ange. The part why I can't understand why we sacked Ange is because he won us our first major trophy in 17 years. But also I can also understand why he got sacked, obviously with the league position and a multitude of other things. But I wish him all the best. I really do. I've got no hard feelings against him. So yeah, see what happens with the new era of Thomas Frank.
Yes, definitely, Travis. Well, let's get into that. I mean, does I know it's probably been spoke about so much about Ange Postecoglou, and was it the right idea to sack him? Was it the wrong idea to sack him? But obviously, he has gone now. Does anyone have any feelings on that? Let's come to you first, Phillip, just on Ange himself. Obviously bringing us a European trophy, our first trophy in 17 years. What a historic moment for Tottenham. And it obviously comes, from my point of view, it comes from one of the worst seasons I've ever seen as a Tottenham fan, but brought the best moment I've ever experienced as a Tottenham fan. It's such a difficult decision, and it's so hard to weigh up the emotional but the logical. How were you feeling about Ange Postecoglou, and do you think it was the right decision to have him go?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely the right decision. And again, I can understand, the fan base who kind of don't agree with it or still can't quite understand it. But as I said before, I was kind of questioning Ange a year ago, to be honest, at the tail end of last season. And when we got to October, November last year, every game weekend, I was writing the same things into, various WhatsApp group chats, so open, so easy, teams cutting through the same copy and paste as last week. Injuries obviously being a mitigating factor in everything else, but I'm happy for Ange that he won the trophy, right, and that he kind of fulfilled that amazing prophecy, right, which goes up there in history probably, right, as one of the coldest lines ever. To literally kind of go there and do it, right? And it's not just a League Cup either, it's the UEFA Cup, So I'm happy that he could do it for himself as well. And I'm happy that he can leave the club on a high, right? Because no one will ever know what he would have done next season. I don't think it would have gone in the right way. And I think we would have been making a managerial change midway through the season. So from that perspective, I think I actually have to give the club kudos, for making the decision now, actually, because I think that they have honestly analysed it in detail. I know that, Levy and Enoch and everything have made so many mistakes in the past, and I'm certainly not going to be sitting here defending them now and, saying that they're doing an amazing job, because they're not. But bearing in mind we have got a new CEO that's come on board, and we've got Lange kind of working with that, with Frank, or going to be working with Frank. Paratici's probably going to come back at some point once his band's finished. But I think that those guys, personally, I think they deserve a bit of kudos, because I think they've gone pretty much straight in for the number one choice that they wanted. There was a bit of flirting with Inzaghi, possibly, but was it realistic that he was going to come to us at any point? I don't think so. Maybe his agents might have even been, kind of engaging with us a bit, to try and get a bit more money out of Saudi or whatever, even. But I don't think that was ever realistic. I think they identified Frank, by all accounts, even again months ago. I think I read some articles saying that back in March, when we were still in the quarters of the Europa League, right? So we hadn't even got to the semi yet. So around the Frankfurt game, I guess, that we'd already reached out to him and also to Iraola. And I think it became quite clear that Frank was up for it at that point, but he wanted to kind of keep the season going. And, so I think they deserve a bit of praise that they managed to kind of get him sewn up without, wasting a whole month or something, right? Like the last time when we went, about 70 days or something, right? Trying to desperately find someone and kind of stumbling on Ange in the end. So look, I mean, long story short, 2 turbulent years, 2, crazy years, right? Like highs and lows, roller coaster. But in the end, I'm happy that he went out on a high, and I'm also happy that he kind of leaves with that amazing achievement and doesn't have the opportunity to make it worse. If he'd got fired in November, December, January, then he would have left in a bad way, and a lot of fans probably would have lost that aura around him. My last point around that, though, is again, so many fans got emotional because of the win, and said, oh, let's keep him now. But the reality is, if we'd lost that final, if Mickey hadn't made that goal line challenge, saving clearance, it would have been 1-1. And I'm convinced that United would have gone on to win that game then. And if that happens, then Ange leaves the club almost in, I don't want to say disgrace, but he leaves as the worst manager to have managed our club for God knows how many years, right? Not winning anything, losing against a poor United team. He won it in the end, so that's all that matters, right? But the fact is, football's a very, what's the word? It's an emotional game, but it can change, or it hinges on little moments. And we could have easily lost that final. We could have easily lost that final. We didn't, so it's all good. We're all happy. We're all celebrating. But it was that close to being the worst season ever. And at the end of the day, I think the club realised that with the league performance, regardless of injuries, you can't go out there every week and lose to the likes of the teams that we did, or give up, leads in games. Even the last game of the season, I know it didn't mean much because we just won the cup, but we were shocking in that second half. And I don't really understand why we didn't play the youth then more. We've got good young players coming through, and he didn't play them enough in some of those games. We kept sending out the same players who were fit, and I know we kind of gave up on the league, but what does that mean? I still don't quite understand that. I know we put our eggs in the basket of the Europa League, but since January there was quite a long time between games. We should have still had a higher standard of play overall, or he could have changed the way of playing earlier. He could have got us more compact.
100%. I think a lot of people would agree with you, Philip. I think it's a difficult one, really, because again, you're trying to balance the logical side with the emotional side. I think any Tottenham fan would be lying to you if they said that Ange Postecoglou was perfect, because we finished 17th in the Premier League, which is unheard of, really the worst ever Premier League finish for Tottenham. But it came obviously with that trophy, and you're right. I think 90%, 95% of Tottenham fans would have had Ange gone if we lost that game against Manchester United. And then obviously because we won that 90 minutes, we got over the line in that 90 minutes, everything changes. So it was always going to be a difficult decision. Like you said, though, a lot of change around Tottenham. Obviously, Vinay Vengatesham, I think that's how you say his name. He's come in and he's obviously making a lot of change. There's loads of different rumours with the board and everything like that. I won't get into all of that. I'm sure that's its own kind of separate podcast. But there's so much going on in Tottenham, and maybe they felt a managerial change was the right choice. I want to bring in Travis because obviously I know you said at the start that you kind of didn't feel maybe Ange out was the right decision. How are you feeling now that Ange has gone and we've obviously got Thomas Frank coming in? What is your feeling around Tottenham at this moment?
I'm happy with Thomas Frank, obviously with how well we've done at Brentford. Obviously coming up from the Championship to the Premier League, and I thought he'd done a really, really good job with Brentford. And obviously got some top talent in there. Obviously with Mbeumo, who I'm hoping does come to Tottenham, and Wizard, but I don't think Wizard will be. I think he'll be out of Mbeumo and Semenyo from Bournemouth. But I'll be happy with either. I'm just a bit confused. Obviously, why I think we're the only team in the Premier League that could win a European Cup and then go and sack their manager. That's unheard of. I don't think I know any other team in the world that's actually done that, whether that's the La Liga, whether that's the Bundesliga, League One, League Two, wherever it may be. I've never actually heard a storyline like that before, obviously, but it's Spurs that we're talking about. I think Phillip hit the nail on the head, to be fair, when he said about Ange making it halfway through a season and then sacking him anyway, which I think he's probably true, to be fair. I don't think he would have got any backing from the board. And I think he was quite an ignorant person, and he never had a plan B as such. He always stuck to his guns, and then obviously thought he knew best. So I was quite sad to see him go. Obviously, I thought the parade down the Tottenham High Road was absolutely amazing. I'd love to have been there, obviously, if I wasn't at work, but I did watch it on Sky News, and it was absolutely amazing. I knew it'd be a good turnout, but that was something else, really. But as I said earlier, I wish Ange all the best. I'm sure there will be teams sniffing around him to go and be their manager. I just don't think he was the right man for Tottenham. Whereas I think Frank will be. He does a lot with the academy. He knows how to bring young players through. And I have read somewhere again on Twitter. Obviously, as we know, some of the sources on Twitter aren't very reliable. But I have read that he's been given 100 million to spend in the transfer window. But I think, as Tottenham fans, I think we'll believe it when we see it. But I hope he does get some back, and I hope we do get some decent players in. I think Levy will be stupid not to. Obviously, with Champions League next year, I don't think he's got a choice really. But then again, it's Daniel Levy. Do I think he needs to sell the club? Yes. I think he needs to sell it and get some big investors in. There's talk of, I think it was a Petronas company that owns something else. So I think if we're going to go anywhere, I think it needs to kind of be the same owners or similar owners to what Manchester City have got, because they have no problem with spending money, and it goes to show with obviously the investment and the transfers that they've made already. So I think they again, De Bruyne has gone to Napoli. They've found a replacement. I think again there'll just be another force to worry about next year if we don't bring reinforcements in. But yeah, I'm happy with Frank. I hope he does do well at Tottenham. But as we know as Tottenham fans, it's not solely down to the management. We all know that it's the ownership. So
yeah, definitely. I mean, we could have a whole nother podcast just on the ownership alone, couldn't we?
Yeah,
and like you said about the
massively.
100 million. I mean, as much as it sounds nice on paper, when you actually think about it, 100 million is probably going to get you 2 or 3 players, isn't it? Really, for where we're trying to challenge in terms of Champions League football, you're not going to get loads for 100 million. I mean, we're looking at obviously what Liverpool have
We've already spent 35 of it. We've already spent.
I mean, if the 35 went on sale, didn't it? And obviously, I don't think that money was actually physically spent. I think that come from the money that was owed from Harry Kane. So that's not really an investment as such. That's just, we had the money. We just decided to sign sell, which I think he's going to thrive really well under Thomas Frank. But as you say, 100 million in today's market it's not a lot. Harry Kane went for 100 million just for one player. But I don't think we need as many reinforcements as what we think. I think we've got the quality there. I think what went wrong before was obviously Ange only had a plan A. I'm hoping Frank's got a plan B and a plan C, and just see what sort of formation that he plays. I don't think we really, unless Romero goes, I think Danso would fill his space. I think he'd be quite capable to fill Romero's space. I think Kevin Danso is absolutely solid. I really do rate him highly. So I don't think we need too many. But I think if Richarlison goes to Everton, which I have read today, I would let him go. I've got no hard feelings with Richarlison. He's just not really, hit the road running at Tottenham.
I'll stop you right there, Travis, because we'll definitely get on to all of that. I want to try and stick with Frank itself right now. Justin, bringing you in just about Frank and obviously what the differences he's going to bring. What kind of differences do you feel that Frank will bring to Tottenham that maybe Ange didn't have? I mean, obviously you can talk about like the pragmatism and his different styles of football, but what else do you think maybe he could bring to Tottenham? I mean, one thing that I've always thought is Ange was always very harsh with the media, and I feel like Frank is almost the golden boy. When you look at how he talks with the media, he seems to kind of fit perfectly into having a good relationship with them. Is that something positive you feel he could bring to Tottenham?
I think it's a difference in terms of from what we had with Ange. Ange was quite spiky, quite prickly. You could see most of the time he had his head facing down, but that's probably because we lost so many games. So I think that will potentially help in terms of giving some time in terms of the media. But we live in an age now where social media is, you lose one game, you're out the door almost as far as social media is concerned. I think what we will see that will be different is a flexibility around youth. I think as we're seeing particularly in the summer, they haven't really been making decisions on the likes of Ashley Phillips, Luka Vuskovic, Mana Solomon, people like that. They've almost sort of said, well, look, come back into the fold. Let's have a look. Can you be what we need? Can you serve a purpose and benefit for us rather than just having you on the bench, making up a number, and stifling your progress? So I think that will be something that will be really beneficial for some of those players. I think as well, something that will really help is the fact that he's worked within a similar system at Brentford, in the fact that they would have run signings past him, but he wouldn't have had as much say in them. What Tottenham are trying to go down is the route that the likes of Brighton do, the likes of what Brentford did, where it's a case of that it doesn't have to be a shiny name or things like that. It is very much a data-driven. It suits his style. It suits what he's able to do. And he's then able to pick out, these bargains. And also, when you look at it, let's not forget, Brentford were the ones that tried to sign Archie Gray, and they couldn't agree on a deal, and we went in there. Brentford were the ones trying to sign Brennan Johnson, and then we were the ones who went in there as well. So those are two players in particular that club were looking at, and we were looking at in a similar way. So you do hope that he's able to implement a style that will allow for being pragmatic, that allows for a plan A, plan B, plan C, can be tactically aware of changing a game at 60 minutes, 70 minutes, where we didn't really see that with Ange, apart from in the Europa League. So, I think it's a good fit for Spurs. I think the only worry with regards to it is the fact that, where is Spurs level then? Because are we just a club that is going to push for top six, and if we get a trophy, brilliant, or are we actually meant to be going somewhere serious? So it's going to be interesting. I did think that I a bit like Phillip, and his cat, that I wanted Thomas Frank before Ange, and when I was calling for him through the season, I wanted Thomas Frank because I just felt that he had that ability to fit within the mould of the club, but also have variety in his play. So good choice. Now let's see if Spurs will actually back this up and actually back a manager.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think some people would have said they were a bit uninspired when we were getting Thomas Frank after Ange sacking, especially after the European triumph. But again, I think if you do look at it logically, you can see how Thomas Frank does really fit Tottenham and what he'll bring. And also, again, the other thing to mention is a lot of his coaching staff is coming with him to Tottenham.
Well, they've
That's
backed him, which I think
recently.
is good. And that hopefully, you know, I think that was a problem with Ange. They dumped him in and just almost like get on with it with what we had.
Definitely. Rachael, sorry I haven't come to you. I wasn't sure if you were with us completely, but no, please come in. I want to get your opinion
here.
just
I'm
on.
waiting for you to let me in.
Yeah, that's okay. No, you're obviously welcome to come and join in. But please do, you know, let us know, how do you feel about Thomas Frank being the new manager of Tottenham? Obviously, it's a gutsy call from Tottenham to sack Ange after what he's provided, but obviously we're going into this new season now with the Dane. How are you feeling about Thomas Frank being the new manager of Tottenham, and what do you feel about, you know, how are you feeling about what's going to come next season?
Daniel Levy's got a backing, but Daniel Levy won't. Daniel Levy's Daniel Levy, and we're going to be back here again. We're like we was last season.
Yeah, I think obviously a lot of Tottenham fans are going to feel the same way as you on that, because, you know, it's what we've been used to, that kind of 2-year cycle. And it obviously has kind of come to fruition again with Ange Postecoglou leaving. But all we can do is hope that maybe something different will happen.
We need, if it is the same, our fans need to go after Levy. End of discussion. Not sit on the defence. They can't keep letting rinse and repeat. Because that's all it is. And yeah, we got rid of Ange. That's just Daniel Levy all over. Got him a trophy. You're sacked. He done what he needed to do. Goodbye. How long till we turn on Frank? Because I guarantee it won't be long. We turn on the manager before they turn on Levy, which is wrong. On it should be all aimed on Levy. Frank can only deal with the players he's got on the pitch. Yes, he's got to do his tactics. The players have got to adjust. We've also got to bear that in mind. We've also got to give him time to gel with our players, which I think is going to take a little while, to be honest.
Yeah, 100%.
You like the Romero's come out and said things and little things hinting. And I think it's going to take, a little while for our players to come to Frankie's style.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we'll get to that next, really, on the Romero. You kind of gave me a segue into that. But obviously, you know, after Frank's announcement and Ange Postecoglou's departure, Romero kind of came out and said, "And thank you for these 2 incredible seasons. You're a fantastic coach, but above all, a great person who deserves the best. From day one, you paved the way despite the many obstacles that always exist and always will exist. Beyond everything, we won a trophy and went down in the history of this beautiful club, which is the only thing that matters. I wish you the best because you deserve the best, and thank you for everything." Obviously, a quite telling comment, especially the time it came out as well. Obviously came out, just around an hour after Frank's announcement coming in. Phillip, how were you feeling when you saw that? I mean, we know Romero's not one to throw anything out lightly. He's one to kind of throw it out. And again, there's some obvious comments there which really do look like it's aimed towards the hierarchy of Tottenham. Again, obviously, we can go into all the hierarchy in another podcast. We could spend hours talking about Daniel Levy and everything he's done. But how do you feel just on Romero, and what could this mean for maybe his future?
Yeah, I mean, when I saw that he posted or tweeted like within an hour max of that announcement, and I saw the text as well, I wasn't surprised. He was the only guy, right? I think apart from maybe Jed Spence, who didn't post something after Ange left, possibly, and the fact that he did it within an hour. I don't know, like it's a complicated one because I think that Romero, I think he wants to leave anyways. You know, I think he really would like to go to Spain for his family as well. You know, he's given a couple of interviews in the past. I know he's been frustrated with the club a few times. you know, he tweeted last year, didn't he, when he was injured, how he praised the Argentinian fitness
Rather than the
coaches,
Tottenham
right?
one, yeah.
Rather than the Tottenham ones, right? Rightly or wrongly, right? We don't know the background there, but he's got himself, you know, he's written some interesting posts in the past. And look, I mean, a lot of fans are delighted that he does things like that, because it's kind of like, you know, showing it to the board and Levy and stuff. And I get where it's coming from, and I kind of agree with him. The one thing I would say about that, I thought the timing was bad.
Yeah,
You know,
it's a tough one. If I just came in and said one thing, I mean, I think you're completely right. Like, he's almost a spokesperson for the fans sometimes, and I think fans love that. But then you're also an employee of the club, and you're an employee of this new manager that's coming in, and you've got to kind of show a bit of unity in that, rather than kind of maybe throwing it. You know, it's a tough one, isn't it?
If you're the new manager coming in, and if you're the, you know, owner of the club, but, you know, if it was a company as well, right, organization, and you're just a normal employee, you know, doing an office job, whatever, then as the new manager, you're going to be extremely, extremely annoyed by that. And, you know, if that happened to one of the guys in my team, or if they did that, you know, I'd be extremely, extremely upset and annoyed, you know, and generally speaking, those people would get some kind of, you know, rebuffal, or maybe even a warning or whatever, right? But at the end of the day, I get why he's done it. You know, it doesn't surprise me. He's an emotional guy as well, right? He always does. He plays with his heart, doesn't he, on his sleeve. He's always aggressive. You know, he plays football, you know, in the moment, which, you know, I can only kind of also applaud him for as well, right? I think that's what makes him so good. You know, when he's not getting sent off or getting yellow cards or getting injured, you know. I wouldn't want to lose him, but look, at the end of the day, if Atletico Madrid, I think it's simple. If Atletico Madrid have got the money for him, and, you know, they're willing to spend the 60, 70 million, which is going to need to get him, not, you know, rather than the 25 or 30 that they've supposedly bid, you know, whether that's concrete or not, but there was lots of reports saying they want to pay 25, 30. That's not going to happen. He's going to cost 60, 70 million. And if they've got that money and they're willing to go to the end of the window or whatever, you know, then if we get an offer like that, then, you know, I'll probably sell him, right? Because I think, honestly, his heart's not in it. He's won a trophy as well now. He's been here 4 or 5 years. I think it's clear that he wants at some point to go to Spain, you know, the weather, the language. He's got a couple of young kids. Go and live in Madrid, you know, like, just go and do it then, man. You know, like we also can leave on good terms. We get good money for you. And as Travis said, you know, Danzo, he's not on Romero's individual level, right? If you would compare them, obviously, right? Romero's like pretty much captain for Argentina. You know, he's
Danzo feels like a capable option, doesn't he? Feels
Absolutely.
like a capable option.
Absolutely. And I think under Frank, and it's not me saying, oh, let's accept mediocrity compared to Romero, right? But under Frank, the way that Frank will get that defense, you know, set up, something that Ange could never manage, right? We could never get that back. Even when our back four played, we won more games. We had a better points per game average, but we still let in the same kind of goals the whole time. We still stood really high. I think with Danzo in there, if Danzo is Romero's main replacement, I'm confident that he'll do really well alongside Van der Ven. Absolutely. Yeah. And then don't forget, we've got Vuskovic at the club now. And I know he's only 18, you know, he's got to prove himself, but my God, he is an absolute talent.
Yeah.
You know, if nothing bad happens, if he doesn't get injured, or if we make sure that he's got a route to like first team football, he has got the ability already to start games in the Premier League, I believe. It will all depend on how Frank wants to work with it, whether he wants to loan him out another season. Maybe we do get another defender in if we sell Romero. But look, you know, if we sell him, I don't think we're gonna suffer that much, because, you know, Romero is often injured as well. So
yeah,
You
No,
know,
of
I'd
course. I
rather
mean,
have
all
I'd
of
rather
it.
have a happy squad. I'd rather for the Frank era to begin. I'd rather have a, you know, more of a balanced, happy squad, right? That rather than having Romero in there, who maybe feels like he's been kept at the club for another season. I know we're trying to like agree a new contract with him apparently, but I believe that would only be to increase his value like later on. I think he's going to go at some point. So
Well, yeah, we'll
know.
see in due course what happens with the new centre backs coming in, and obviously, you know, people in the chat. It's great to see so many active people in the chat, but people are saying about Romero and obviously Atletico Madrid's interest. We've all known about that, and you know, Tottenham are going to want around 60, 70 million for him. Obviously, a lot of comments suggesting who's going to want to pay that for him, and it is tough. It's tough to know what will happen with him, but we will see in due course what will happen. Justin, I'll bring you in quickly about possible other departures. I mean, it's not just Romero that could be going. You've obviously got some rumours of Son talking with Jose Mourinho about Fenerbahce, or maybe some rumours with Saudi Arabia. You've got other players that could move on as well, you know, like Richarlison, Basuma possibly. What are you feeling about this squad, and who could you see possibly departing this summer?
Yeah, I think the players that you've said there would be sensible options. I don't think it's a shame really with Basuma. You know, we've not ever really seen the player that we signed from Brighton, and I think if we could get, you know, a decent amount of money back for him, I think that would be an option, especially obviously when you've got the likes of Sarr and Bentancur really there. You almost feel like you could let him go, and those two would vie with the position with potentially Bergvalers or Archie Gray as well. So if you're thinking you're going down that route, you know, and I think partly what we were hoping for from him was a number 6. Well, we never obviously really sort of saw that. I think he was kind of, whether he was, we wanted to be 6, they wanted he was Brighton. I think he was an 8, and I think he just kept not really showing what his best position was with us. It was almost like, you know, even at the beginning of the season when he had his disciplinary issues, he'd felt like he made it and that was it. So I think Basuma could go. I do think Richarlison as well, because I think there's strong interest from Everton. You know, if we can get 40 plus million for him, I think that'd be good business. You know, we've got Solanke. It might be if we bring in Semenyo or we bring in Mbeumo, you know, the Johnson then becomes maybe more of a striker. And then obviously if we do get that one that you mentioned from Stade Rennes, you know, that's another sort of cheaper alternative option to play off the main striker. Let's not forget Solanke. You know, if we can keep him fit, you know, he's a decent striker. He should be getting, as you know, 15 to 20 goals a season. I don't think he had a bad sort of run last year. Obviously the injuries just did not help with regards to that. So, you know, I think it's just going to be a case of whether Everton stamp up the money with regards to that. I think, you know, his first love was Everton. He made that very, very clear. So it might be that's the reason. I don't think he'd go anywhere else. You know, I know we've always joked, you know, we always seem to joke with players about going to Saudi. I don't think he would do that. I'm not so sure Sonny would as well. Obviously, I know I've seen these links with Turkey, with Fenerbahce. Again, I think the key part for us from the club, sadly, isn't going to be the sentiment. It's going to be the money, because the moment he leaves, a certain section of fan base will not support us anymore. You know, which is sad, but that's what happens. It's not, you know, this isn't a shock whenever players come over from, you know, particularly from Asia. You know, they have a big following that comes with them. We see it with Matoma at Brighton, you know. So to be fair, that wouldn't be a surprise, but I think from the club's perspective, it's going to come down to money. Obviously, it's going to be interesting whether Daniel Levy does have any say, because as we've seen from the last couple of statements, it came from the board. He didn't have a single word in it. So whether that's part of the change, who knows? You know, so we're going to obviously have to see how things pan out. I think there could be more to go. Obviously, you know, we've had Tell now coming, but I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, if you would say to me, pick 5 players from Spurs that I think will go this year or in this window, I think it'd be Richarlison, Sonny, Basuma, Romero, and I'm going to stick it out there, but potentially Vicario, because I think there's been talks with, rumours around him and AC Milan. Could it be that we've brought in Kinski to replace Vicario, and we keep Josh Keeley, as the backup to him, because he had a brilliant season at Leyton Orient. So it could be that he then steps up. So I'd possibly say if I was picking my 5, that would be the 5, but it could be others as well. I do think, there's got to be massive changes from top to bottom. We're starting to see it. Let's just hope it continues.
Yeah, no, I completely get what you mean there, Justin. Like you said, it could be a really, really busy transfer window at Tottenham this year. There's so many unknowns, and we've got nowhere to really, we don't know where we're going to go. But one thing we do know, Travis, is that Matthias Tel has obviously come in permanently for around £30-ish million. That kind of, I think they did obviously negotiate that down a little bit, and there's obviously loads of different add-ons on that. So it is rising to a significant fee. Obviously, you could look at that. Is he the long-term replacement of Son, or is he just another kind of utility player for Tottenham? How are you feeling about Tottenham making that permanent? Obviously, last season I think he got 3 goal involvements in around 20 appearances. It's not like he lit the Premier League alight when he was here, but maybe it is a smart one from Tottenham. How are you feeling about it?
I think the thing with Tel is he's young, and I think he will thrive under Thomas Frank. Obviously, Frank probably wouldn't have seen too much of him yet. Obviously, apart from the games he played for Tottenham last year. Now, I think 35 is a bit of a steal, to be fair, because obviously he at first didn't want to come to Tottenham, and then obviously Ange got on the phone and explained why he needed to come to Tottenham and what he was going to do at Tottenham, blah, blah, blah. And I think he put a quote on something yesterday or the day before, basically saying that, Tottenham isn't just a football club, it's everything. So obviously he has seen some good things, and obviously made some good relationships with the squad players. I know he's good friends with what's his name, Wilson Odobert, obviously being in the France under 21s. So yeah, I think he will probably be Sonny's replacement. I'll be gutted to see Sonny go, to be fair. I really would. He's committed to the club since 2014-15. I think we signed him. So, he's been a real good servant to the club. So, and he's been one of my favourites. So it will be a shame to see him go. But I think he will. Yeah, I think, as you say, he will be the replacement for Sonny. And I think he'll thrive under Thomas Frank. Obviously, being a youngster, we know Thomas Frank obviously brings the youngsters through the academy into the first team, and that's obviously what I've heard. That's what he's good at. So
yeah, I mean, we heard that he signed off on this Tel deal. He agreed with it. He was happy for him to come in permanent. So he must be looking forward to working with him.
Yeah, and I think Tel. I think when he first comes to Tottenham last year, I didn't think he was that great, but he did show good sparks towards the end of the season. So yeah, I've got nothing bad to say about the signing of Tel. I think he's going to be a good player for us, and obviously he's signed till 2031, I think it is. So yeah, I think he will do really well at Spurs.
Well, Tottenham fans will definitely get behind him like we always do with our players. Obviously, again, talking about that sentimentality, what David Clark's saying has killed the club for decades. And I think, obviously some people will look at that differently and think, obviously, Sonny's a club legend. But we're thinking where Ange has gone, it has been kind of maybe a year of maybe kind of cutting the cord and just breaking apart everything. But
I just want to add on to that, Joe. Sorry to interrupt. I think,
no, of course.
I think he's been committed to the club for 10, 11 years, and he is fully committed, and he's never been one of these big-headed players like Romero or whoever think, I'm going to go and play for Atletico, I'm going to play for Madrid, I'm going to play for Barcelona. He's never once had that mentality, which I think speaks volumes of him, really. So yeah, I've got a lot of time for Son, and if he does go off, I wish him all the best, because he's stayed committed, and he ain't got a bad bone in his body. And I think me personally, I think he's more of a legend than what Harry Kane is. Really, if you look at it that way, Bayern Munich come calling for Kane, he went. And Sonny's he's never had that mentality or that ignorance about him. So yeah, he's been absolutely superb.
Yeah, I mean, he's cemented himself in Tottenham folklore and legacy. And, he's going to be one that I think, he's going to be talked about for years and years, even after he's finished at Tottenham and after his career's finished. So completely agree with you there, Travis. Rachael, how are you feeling about some of these other names that we've been linked with? You've got the likes of Semenyo, Mbuemo. There's so many different things out there. Are any of these kind of transfers exciting you, or are you thinking any of them could possibly get done?
I want Eze from Crystal Palace, if I'm honest. I really do. But, yeah, again, it all depends on if they can fit in with our team. And if we need to get the right players. We need to push on from getting this cup. Do you get what I'm saying?
100%.
If we don't get the players, then getting that cup is pointless because we're not pushing on. We're not pushing ourselves to go that step further, and I feel like I'm constantly repeating myself when it comes to this. Daniel Levy will go for a cheaper version of Ronaldo. Do you get what I'm like on
Yeah.
that?
One thing I'll add to that, Rachael, and like you said about the repeating idea, I think this is exactly what we said when we got to the Champions League final. We got to that final, we're thinking, all right, maybe we didn't win the trophy, but let's build on this. And then we had that transfer window that we did, and we brought in Lo Celso, who flopped for Tottenham. We had Ndombele, who flopped for Tottenham. We had all these players come in, and we didn't build the right way, did we? So, I'm sure you're kind of saying we can't have that repeat again, can we?
No. And I just think this is the time for Daniel Levy to say, you know what, Tottenham fans, there you go. We are going to push on. And if we don't, he said, it's going to be mind-blowing because we can do it. And I think under the right manager, I think he'll do well. I think give him a chance. I don't think he was given that much of a chance, and he didn't get the time to settle in properly and show what he's about. And so, I do think I think Son. I will be upset to see Son go because he's been with us for a very long time. But I think it's time for him now to move on. He's done what he wanted to do. He leave the club as a legend for getting that trophy. So I think it's now to get fresh legs in and move the youngsters forwards.
Yeah, I mean, it does kind of feel like a new era for Tottenham, isn't it? Where we've kind of got over that trophy drought and we're moving forward. And again, you've got all this change, and it is possible we are to see the likes of Son leave, who has been in that previous era and kind of got to the end of the book, and he's won the trophy, the fairy tale ending. Maybe it is time for him to move on. And, again, I think it is fair to say a lot of Tottenham fans would agree that Son hasn't been at his best in the last couple of years. He has kind of seen a downturn in his form. So maybe we are
I think it went downhill when Kane left, to be honest.
Yeah,
I think as soon as Kane left, I thought he weren't himself. Him and Kane was a partnership. And once he left, he had no one.
But at least he come out of it with a trophy and, an absolute
That's
legacy.
more than Harry Kane done for us.
Definitely. Phillip, how are you feeling about some of those links? You've obviously got, again, Mbuemo is obviously a key one. For me, one of the ideal ones. I think he'd be perfect at Tottenham. But obviously, there's obviously weighing up his options, and there's a possibility United is still on the cards for him. Who would be your ideal signing if we were to get one over the line? Or is it someone different as well? I mean, I know I made a video recently on the channel. Again, please do check it out, about my ideal Tottenham transfer window. And I love the idea of Xavi Simons, if that was an option.
Yeah, I'd love Xavi Simons. I think I'd actually take him over Mbuemo if it was a straight choice, actually, because I think there's more upside to it overall. I would love Mbuemo because he's Premier League proven, plays on the right, doesn't he? He can he scores goals, but he's a creator. He's tricky. He's robust. He's a proper Premier League player. And he's been with Frank for 6 years, isn't he? He went through the Championship with him. He's kind of been there, done it. So he's a proper grafter as well.
100%. And his numbers don't lie, do they? I mean, last season, his numbers were incredible, weren't they?
Stats are outstanding. He's 25, I think. So, he's got 5 years, right, at the top still to go. The only thing I would say, if we go up to 70 million for him, I know the valuation of players has changed again right now, but I don't know, if we were going to spend 70 million on him, would there be other alternatives at that kind of level? And I guess if you get up to 70 million, there's the argument, well, what's another 15 on top? And that's the thing that always annoyed me with Levy and with Spurs a bit before. So when we've gone out and bought the likes of Ndombele or, even Lo Celso and stuff, if you'd only just gone a tiny bit more on top, then you would have got that next level of player, a bit like what Liverpool did, when they signed Alisson, Salah, that batch of players, right, in that one season when we beat them at Wembley, was it 4-1 or something? And then the two clubs kind of went in different directions. And, I think my dream signing, if I could pick one signing who I think would kind of be a game changer for us, would be Adam Wharton. I would go out there and, put 70 million on the table for Adam Wharton. And I would get him in and actually build the midfield around them. I know we've got Bergvall, I know we've got Archie Gray coming through, but for me, Adam Wharton is the future of the England midfield, and he's a complete midfielder. Like he's going to go in one season, if he stays at Palace, or in 2 seasons, he'll join Man City or one of those top teams anyways, and he'll be a 100 million plus player. He'll be above Declan Rice in terms of his level. I'm convinced of that. We could have got him like 2-3 years ago for 20 million, and I think
wasn't he at Blackburn, wasn't he, before? And
yeah,
he went to Palace, and it kind of knew
he was a Blackburn, and we bought the other lad instead. Was it Ashley
Phillips? And he's been kind of in that loan cycle since, hasn't he?
Yeah, and we had the option to get Wharton, and we could have got him, and we rejected him, or we screwed it up, or I don't know what, right? But like, if I could pick someone, it would be him, because I think he would change the complete dynamic of our team, actually. And he's someone who, he would be the Declan Rice of us, right, in terms of compared to that lot down the road. The guy who's running the show from the middle. He's got power. He can tackle. He can twist, and So I think that would be a game changer. But you'd have to do 70 at least for him, but maybe even more. But if we really want to kind of solidify ourselves and, give Frank the best tools to do it, I think we need a couple of signings like that. And that's the only thing, going back to Romero quickly, is where I kind of changed my mind a bit from what I said earlier. And it's like, if we want to be a top team and we want to show and mean business, despite a Frank coming in who can get more out of probably players who are a level lower, like a Danzo still, who's solid, we shouldn't be selling Romero, right? We should be doing everything to keep him, because we could still get him for another 2 years maybe, right? And if we get him and he plays alongside Van der Ven, that's still better than having Kevin Danso there. And what are we going to do? Are we really going to invest the money that we get in from him from Atletico Madrid? I don't know. So all I would say is maybe we should actually focus on keeping the talent that we have, the top talent, and then moving on some of those others like Bentancur, Richarlison anyways. Yeah, he can go to Everton. Good move for everyone, I think. But yeah, Wharton would be my dream, and I would take Mbuemo or Xavi Simons, I think. My last point before I ramble on too long, just going back to Tell quickly. I'm based in Germany, right? And I watch a lot of the Bundesliga, and unfortunately I've got a lot of Bayern Munich friends as well. They're kind of like the Man United of Germany, obviously, right? A lot of people don't even come from Bayern from Munich, but they support them anyway, right? When really they should be supporting their local club. But I would say the real Bayern fans, they're pretty gutted that Tell's leaving. When he broke through like 3 years ago, just before, I think the season before Kane arrived, right? He was really, really good. And a lot of them are quite annoyed with the club for not giving him chances or enough chances, or for playing him in the right position or giving him more minutes. And they're pretty upset that he's left. You'll find all the kind of keyboard warriors on Twitter, the Bayern fans, who are like saying, oh yeah, he was never good enough to play for Bayern, right? Now we've got Elise and,
They're
all these kind of players,
trying to
right?
cope with it, aren't they?
Nico Williams is coming in. What's Nico Williams compared to Tell? Okay, fair points. But they're the keyboard warriors. The real Bayern fans are gutted that he's leaving. And for the price we got him, that's really, really good business. And I think that he could, I don't want to go hyperbole, but I think he's going to be a bit of a revelation under Frank. I've got a feeling he's going to have a really, really good season next season, and he's going to play a lot of games, I think. So
yeah,
I'm
well,
really excited about that.
one thing we can definitely hope is if there's one manager that can probably unlock the potential of a player, it is Thomas Frank, and we've seen him do it numerous times with Ollie Watkins in the Championship, and then in Buemo, and there's Ivan Toney. There's many options where they've kind of come through and really shone under Frank. So we can hope that Tell's going to be that. Looking at maybe a cheaper option, there has been some news recently or within the last couple of hours of Calimuendo from Rennes. Obviously, I know, Justin, you mentioned it earlier on in the podcast about the links to him. All right, he's had 17 goals and 3 assists last season, so pretty good. But obviously, in the French league, so you're not always 100% sure how well that will translate to the Premier League. Do you know too much on Calimuendo? Do you have too much, of an opinion on what you feel like he could bring to Tottenham if it was to be one that we looked at?
I think what you'll see that he will bring is hopefully, because I think what's going to be key is, as we saw, with Tell when he was signed, is that if Thomas Frank is on board with this, then it hopefully means he'll be given a chance to shine and show what he can properly do. I think the difficulty that we've seen with some of the signings that have been made is that they've not really fitted in, and they've more sort of been brought in for the club rather than the actual manager. So it's one of those ones where the stats, as you rightly said, they stack up. What he he needs to do, and hopefully can give that competition for Solanke. I think the difficulty that we've had to do is the fact when it comes to people like Rach, take care.
Let's quickly Justin.
Yeah, go on. Final word. Yeah, that's fine.
I want to sorry, Rachel. But do you want to quickly just say where people could find you and everything like that? Obviously, I know you need to quickly go.
Yeah, you can find me on TikTok. ADHD Bear Spurs. I go live daily. If people want to come in and talk to me about ADHD, bipolar, anything football related, anything. That's where I will be. So have a lovely summer, guys. I'll be seeing you, obviously. But everyone else, have a lovely summer. And come on, you Spurs. And I've got one word and one word early. Levy out. Bye.
Thank you, Rachel.
Bye.
But yeah, carry on, Justin, please.
Yeah, no. I mean, to be fair, I think the from what I've sort of briefly seen, and to be fair, obviously it only came out tonight. From what I've briefly seen, obviously he will give more of a direct sort of positional play, rather than I think what we have with Richarlison is more of his versatility. But obviously the difficulty there was I think that the thing for him is injuries really more than anything else. So whilst I would be intrigued by the signing, I think it has to be one of those ones that's done more as a Richie replacement, because what you don't want to be doing is spending potentially this big money and then you're stifling him with it being then Solanke, Richarlison, then you've got Dane Scarlett, and then you've got obviously Brennan Johnson if they're going to push him down the middle. So there's lots of people that are going to be in there, and you then sort of think, well, would that have a negative impact. So, I think, as I said, I mean, we got to be brutally honest. I don't think we can stick our noses up at the French league anymore after what we saw from PSG. Yeah, okay, they spent money, but they demolished Inter Milan in the Champions League final. So I think that side of it has sort of gone. But just going back to something that was mentioned before of an ideal signing, I said for me the one I'd really like is Eze, but I will throw a couple out there that would be of an interest to me. One would be, and I know that Leverkusen look at this, would be James McAtee from Manchester City. But also, if not him, then maybe you consider the option with now more players coming in. Could you go and get someone like Phil Foden? Okay, obviously
That
you
would
might
be a
have to do
big one,
some
wouldn't it?
changes, but is he going to cost you an astronomical amount? City have gone and spent. Yes, he didn't have the best seasons, but I think he could be a game-changing signing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be wages, Jay, to be fair, if anything.
Yeah. That's always going to be the tricky part when you throw, because as we say, we can all sit here and throw all different names out there, but the problem's always going to be the wages element with it, which is why I think as much as sometimes people, I've seen it in comments where people have put the noses up at Semenyo and and Bremo and people like that and got maybe be favoured more towards Eze. The fact of it being is that those guys' stats do stack up quite well to Eze's, and I think realistically, the wage structure and things like that, which is why, to be fair, I'd throw McAtee in, because I think I've heard reports of £25 million for him. I don't think wages would be astronomical. I think that would almost tick every single box for the club, but also for Thomas Frank.
Can I just
Definitely.
throw it out there? Who would take Jack Grealish at Tottenham?
I wouldn't.
I wouldn't.
No.
Simple reason, but I'll give you my reasoning for it. I think when I watch Jack Grealish a lot, there's so much talent within there, but I think the problem being is to have somebody like him at the club, you almost have to change a little bit how you play. You almost have to come a bit slower, and sort of, because I've watched him down in terms of on the wing, and he's just too slow. And I think as well, coming back to one of the things you said about Foden, he's on over like £300,000 a week. You're only ever going to sign him as a loan, and then City pay a chunk of the wages. Which do you really want to do that for a 29-year-old where maybe it doesn't suit the system? That would be my honest view on that. Maybe you could have him as experience, but do you really want to throw that sort of money for somebody like that? I'd rather, if you're going to go get a player for experience, I'd rather you go to Bayern Munich and go get Paulinho as the number 6.
I think that's what's hard. I think for me, and I think it would just be nice to get a player or two players from who have got Premier League experience. I understand why we go abroad, why we've got Tell, and why we're looking at this fella from the French league. Obviously with Rennes, I get it, but it would just be nice to have a transfer window where we actually go to a Premier League club and just get a player with the experience.
I think we would. I think it would be more a case of like if Romero went, and maybe we would go and get Jared Branthwaite, or we went after Mark Gahey, because obviously we know that the contract situation with Gahey, he's got 12 months left.
Yeah.
Where would he stand with that? So I do think there'd be scope for there, but I think when you're looking at players maybe that aren't going to go straight into the team, and that's where I think the key part comes into why. I don't have a problem with the Semenyo talks, or I don't have an issue with regards to Mbeumo or Eze or anybody like that. I think that's perhaps why they're doing it, because they have got the Premier League experience, perhaps.
Yeah, I think as well, going back to Romero. I know we spoke about Romero, but the only thing that I don't worry too much about if we lose Romero is with Kevin Danso. He's an old school defender. He's all or nothing. And that's what I like about Danzo, and that's why I don't really. If we can get 80 million for Romero, I'll take the team's hand off. I really would. But yeah, I don't have any sort of panic stations with losing Romero because of how good and how old school Danzo is. So I don't think he really put a foot wrong in the games that he played towards the end of the season. And again, another player that came out of nowhere. We pinched him off. I think it was Wolves or Everton, one of the two teams.
Who is that? What player was that?
Kevin
Danzo. He was.
Danzo. Yeah, it was Wolves, wasn't it?
Wolves. He went to medical and he got cancelled to come to us. So I do get what you're saying. I just think, though, if you're trying to, as you said before, keep the level of the club and going for that next step, getting something like Gehi or getting something like Branthwaite, that's a statement signing.
I would
to me.
choose Gehi over Branthwaite, I think.
Yeah, same.
I'm interested to know what Philip's
got-
cat thinks.
Yeah, what do you think? Actually, he's asking. He's got a controversial question. Actually,
Go for it.
he's asking. He's asking whether we or anyone here in the pod thinks under Frank whether Dragusin could still have any kind of future with us, bearing in mind we won't be playing like a crazy high line, that maybe the defensive structure is better, right? Just an interesting question, right? Maybe controversial because most people would say, let's sell Dragusin as soon as he's fit, right? He's not good enough. But just maybe an interesting one.
I'll tell you what, I'll answer that as my final question because I'll have to shoot you,
Yeah,
mate.
go for it, Justin.
So I'm not too fussed with regards to Dragusin because I think it will depend on what the club do. Because if you are going in, let's say you're going in with the likes of, because one thing I found frustrating, particularly when we signed Dragusin, was it almost stifled the likes of Ashley Phillips and and people like that. And I do have a bit of a frustration with Ben Davies still being at the club because I feel like that taken away from somebody else. So to me, I wouldn't have a problem with Dragusin going. I think if we could, I'm trying to keep this going. I mean, the professionalism from Travis is shocking. I'll be brutal. If I'm honest, I mean,
You can't stop looking at the cat now.
I mean, the cat is. I can see the cat looking at me and very much now saying to Phillip, "Why is Travis not taking this seriously?"
All I can hear is that cat meowing that song that he changed.
To be honest, I mean, I'm just waiting. The only thing I'm grateful for is that it hasn't upset him so much. He started cleaning himself in an inappropriate area. So, let's just be grateful from that side. In terms of Dragusin, though, I think it will. There's no real, I suppose, worry on that because he's still coming back from his ACL. So, how long he'll be and what have you. So, I think he would probably stick around anyway because I don't think you're going to get him back for the beginning of the season for people to then warrant buying him. So I think it will be a case that if anyone goes out the back, it will be Romero.
Yeah, I can see what you mean with that. I mean, I'd agree with you, Philip, though, in terms of Dragusin. Like, I mean, under Ange's philosophy and his system, it just didn't suit him at all. He wasn't the ball-playing midfielder ball-playing defender that we've needed in terms of Romero and Van de Ven. But I always thought, in terms of a solid central defender, he would be perfect for a lot of Premier League clubs. It's just that the way we played really highlighted his flaws. So you think maybe in a system where Thomas Frank is going to be a bit more, a defender is going to be doing a defensive role, Dragusin might fit that quite well. We'd have to wait and see.
I mean, he could have moved to Bayern. Right? We forget, right? He could have moved to Bayern at the end of the day, and there were other massive teams interested in him. It'll be interesting to see if he's lost any more pace maybe when he comes back because of his injury. And they'll be able to determine that, won't they? Like with the stats and stuff. But, he's quite young, I think, isn't he? Still 22, 23. I think he looks a lot older than he is maybe. But, he's still a good player, right? I'd be interested to see if he kind of gets integrated a bit into the team or, Frank just decides maybe he's a good guy to kind of just move on, right? And still get a transfer fee, hopefully, from him back in Italy or someone like that, maybe Spain, France, whatever, Germany. He'd probably fit very well into the Bundesliga, to be fair. Even for another team.
I got Eric Dyer vibes when he was playing under Ange. He might be a completely different player under Frank, but yeah, he just shouted Eric Dyer vibes to me when he was playing under Ange, and that's really bad.
But we'll definitely come into that. But I want to thank you all for being. I want one last question, just one word answer from all three of you. Because for me, I think the ideal, the thing that we desperately need is that defensive midfielder. And we haven't really been able to get onto a full-on conversation with that. But first, Travis, if you were to get one number 6 who was to come in and play next to Sarr, Bergvall, Bentancur, who would it be?
I'll tell you, I would take, and I said this on a podcast last year, Joshua Kimmich.
Okay, Joshua Kimmich. Yeah, that's not a bad shout. Justin, who would you think would be the ideal signing?
I think
in that
just for
position?
the experience, and I don't think it means age really matters on this front. I think it'd be Paulinho.
Paulinho. So 2 Bayern Munich players on that. But Philip, what are you feeling? Were you thinking maybe Adam Wharton would be the best option?
Yeah, I think Wharton isn't like a proper hardcore number 6 like Paulinho is. Not quite as defensively. He's more of an all action. But yeah, I think he can play number 6 pretty well, like with Bergwell next to him or Madders in there or whoever else. So yeah, Adam Wharton or Paulinho if we could get him as a backup, I would say.
Well, I would say
Wharton.
mine, but I already made a video on it. So please go and check that out on the Scarfey Spurs Talk page, and you can find out who I think would be the ideal one. It wasn't one of those, so be something different. But again, thank you all for everybody joining. Thank you for, we've had a lot of viewers coming in and out of the stream, so really appreciate everyone who joined. First of all, Philip, thank you for coming on. Where can we find you, or all your other avenues in terms of your content?
I'm mainly just on X at Frankfurt Spurs. I'll be on YouTube eventually soon, but yeah, for now just on X.
Perfect, thank you, Justin. Again, great to see you again. Becoming like a weekly
Yeah,
little meeting for you and me, isn't it? So, but yeah, thank you for coming on. And
yeah, I mean,
where
to
can
be
we
honest,
find you?
probably here weekly, and like Phillip on X as well. So I think it will just be interesting. Hopefully over the summer that we can do more of these and have a lot more to talk about. So thank you so much for having us on.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Justin. And Travis, where can people find everything that you're doing?
Yeah, thanks for having me back on. Sorry I was late again. So I'm going away tomorrow to Turkey for a week. So I've just had me head buried in that. You can find me on X at Official Caster, where obviously we talk about Spurs. And I also do a lot of work on LinkedIn for men's mental health, which I am hopefully after holiday going to have a YouTube channel up and running that I'd absolutely love to have all you guys on. And again, another great panel. Yeah, thanks for having me back on.
Thank you, Travis. That's great to hear about that. Such an important topic that definitely is important. And also have a great holiday to Turkey. Hope you get a break and maybe can switch off everything Tottenham for a little bit, can't you?
Yeah, hopefully.
But yeah, thank you all for joining again. Please like and subscribe to the Scarfey Spurs Talk page. And again, thank you for Harry. Obviously, he's doing his exams, finishing up in hopefully a couple of days. So yeah, good luck to him on everything with that. But yeah, again, great to have some familiar faces. And yeah, looking forward to the next show. We'll see you later.